Welcome back. Today we're going to have a little chat, a little conversation about Warhammer 40k and why it seems to be somewhat lacking in character at the moment. Specifically, talking about models, because it feels like we see new releases and new reveals for things like Age of Sigmar, we see them for things like Killteam for Necromunda, and they are full of personality, they're full of character, they are just mind-blowing in terms of how cool they look and how much detail is piled into every single miniature. And then we get things like Courtiers and we get the Sanguinary Guard, and there are certain elements of 40k models, especially around the Space Marine range, that just seem to be really playing it safe at the moment. And is that necessarily a good thing? Are Games Workshop aiming for that? Is it just a byproduct of them trying to make the game more approachable? Is it a conscious choice? We're going to have a little conversation, but before that, this video is brought to you by Into the AM, and I bring you some fantastic news from Into the AM because a bunch of their most beloved products are on their way back. They're back in stock. You can buy them again, which is really important for me specifically because, and we're going to peel back the curtain, we're going to open up the sausage, we're going to look in the onion. I'm running out of analogies and I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say anymore. Basically, when you're doing one of these ad spots, what you want to do is have the new product or the returning product, you want to wear it. You want the people to see you being happy and enjoying life in your thing, which, I mean, is normally not a problem for Into the AM stuff because I wear their t-shirts all the time now anyway. I don't think I really wear anything else. This time round, obviously, best to wear one of the returning products. I lost both of them, and I don't know how. My Abyss tee and my Neon Shores tee, they're both gone. They're both disappeared. They're both missing. But this time round, one could argue that if anything, it's just an excellent time to replace them because they're back in stock. You can do that now, and there's a sale on, and there's 10% off using the link. I mean, surely this just means that it's time to buy a couple of new t-shirts. And why would you not? Huge sale, extra discount, you can go wild and get some great t-shirts at the same time. Thank you very much to Into the AM for sponsoring this video. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go and replace those things I lost. If you're wondering, yes, I did order those 2 replacement shirts because I really liked them, and I'm still annoyed that I managed to lose them, even though I recorded that ad spot like 2 days ago. Anyway, I'm going to show you 2 things in quick succession and explain briefly why I think that one of them is quite a big swing, and one of them is the very definition of playing it safe. So, this is the new Killteam Hivestorm, and Games Workshop, for whatever reason, decided to bring back Vespid Stingwings. Of all the things to bring back, they went for the Stingwings. Now, this is a reimagining and updating of a model range that has been around for so long, literally like 3rd edition, 20-something years. They've been about for quite a while, these. They were blue. They also didn't look anywhere near as good as this, and much though I've occasionally thought to myself, you know what, it'd be kind of cool if they did bring the Vespid Stingwings back. That'd be kind of interesting. I never actually expected them to do it, because despite them bringing back Kroot initially had a slightly bigger range than the Vespids did, in that they had, what, like 3 kits as opposed to... No, technically maybe 4? I think maybe they had 4 kits initially, and that was it. But the Vespids, they had 1, just 1, in resin, and the chances of them bringing them back, I always thought was actually quite slim. But they did, and I do genuinely think this is a bit of a swing. This is quite a big thing that they've done here, because it would have been a lot easier to let these die, and I don't think most people would have noticed or cared, and they wouldn't have missed them, and it would have made absolutely no difference to anyone. They didn't need to spend the time, the effort, and the money to develop entirely new Vespid Stingwings, but they did. They did, and they improved on them, and they have created newer versions of those Stingwings that, frankly, look fantastic. But there have got to be easier things they could have done to put alongside the new Flying Tempestus, who aren't actually Elysians, but I'm okay with it now. This is effectively a range refresh that I think most people wouldn't have noticed if they never did it. In stark and disappointing contrast to that, we have new Courtiers and we have new Sanguinary Guards, and both of these reveals were extremely disappointing for a lot of people. I mean, I know I wasn't a fan, but I also kept an eye out to see what the overall reaction was and what people thought, and by and large, what I saw a lot of were people lamenting a lack of personality, an extreme shift towards just being visually not as interesting as their previous counterparts, Kotias especially, it kind of feels like all of the character was taken away and was replaced with quite plain, very bulky armour with a metal nappy, which is not necessarily what people wanted out of the model. Both the Sanguinary Guard and the Sanguinor, I guess, and Kotias, they were fairly well placed to receive some sort of update at some point, and of course it made sense to do Kotias along with the Imperial Agents Codex, because, well, he'd be quite a big part of that, and he's also one of the few named Inquisitors that we have. We actually don't have that much choice when it comes to buying Inquisitor models. So it made sense to bring them back, but it's such a vast difference between what they decided to do with the Vespid Stingwings, what they do regularly with Killteam and with Necromunda, as to what they did for 40k proper. Now, the Sanguinor kind of falls in between those two for me. It was alright, but there were things I would have preferred that they did differently. The rest of the Blood Angel reveals hasn't been terrible, but when it comes to those specific characters, those specific models, they are so different to their previous incarnations that it kind of feels like they intentionally made them more bland. It's like the formula was, make bigger but remove character, which is not really what I want to see from updates to older kits. By contrast, the Vespid Stingwings have been languishing around in Finecast for years and years and years, borderline completely forgotten. No one was really clamouring for them to come back, as far as I know. I certainly only remembered them every now and again, and then went, yeah, that'd be kind of cool, but never expected them to do anything with them. And yet, they got a really nice update. And that's like an isolation thing, right? The Killteam is not necessarily the same as 40k, even though a lot of the things that you can use in one, you can use in the other. The real difference, that comes down to things like Age of Sigmar and Necromunda, where release and reveal after release and reveal, you get something that is fantastic, something that is better than what came before, something that feels like a whole ton of just imagination was poured into that sculpt. And the thing is, I've said before, it's not even a thing of like technical ability. I don't think it'd be fair to sit there and go, oh, well, it's just the people who are working on AOS are better at their job. It's all done under direction. It's all done to aim towards a specific goal. But it feels like the goal for 40k is steadily becoming making things, especially Space Marine things, just a bit less interesting visually. Now, when you look at things like the Primaris range overall, the fact that it is now almost completely replaced the Firstborn range, you could argue that it fits in with the whole idea of simplifying the process of building a Space Marine army. When you look at like how many options there are from old like Firstborn kits compared to Primaris kits, there is a significant difference. You have things like, well, I mean, Intercessors. You choose what kind of bolter you want. There you go, you're done. Hellblasters. Same thing. Like, it applies to pretty much any Primaris kit where you pick a thing and then everyone takes a thing and that's it. There's not much in the way of totally different weapon profiles from Marine to Marine. Totally different, for instance, to Devastator squads where you could have a heavy bolter and a las cannon and a plasma cannon and a melter cannon as well. All just like a multi-melter, sorry. Melter cannon, whatever. You know what I meant. You got it. Also, the Sergeant, I think you could have like a bolt pistol or a plasma pistol and a power sword. Like, there's so many different weapon profiles for what was a 5-man squad. Now it's a lot easier. It's a lot simpler. Now, gameplay-wise, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, even though it does reduce choice, because they are the most popular army that Games Workshop have. They outsell literally everything, I think, still. And allowing people an easier route in to playing that army, I can see why they've done it, even if occasionally it feels like they've gone in too hard. But what's to be gained from making everything a bit less visually? Just a bit less. What's to be gained from that? Because that's sometimes what it feels like. It sometimes feels as though all of those crazy cool options that you used to have for things like the old Stern Guard kit, the new one, you don't get 1,000 spares to make the rest of your Space Marine army look fancy from that kit, but you did from the old one. Things like that, things like removal of the customization of your individual guy, right down to the fact that when you look at the Sanguinary Guard, it's gone from 5 to 3. You're missing the wings, the heads are a lot more reserved, the weapons are a lot more sensible, although that's not necessarily a bad point for me personally. It does feel like overall things are just getting a little bit less a little less in your face, a little less over the top, a little less extreme. And I think it's mostly because they want it to be that level of accessible where it's not horrifically intimidating to paint a special unit for your Blood Angels. It's not horrifically intimidating to try and put together an army list. It's not something where you look at a character model and go, there's no way I'd ever be able to paint that. Instead, you look at it and go, actually, I could probably do that. That shouldn't be too hard. Whether that's what they're aiming for, or whether that's just the impression that it seems to be giving, I'm not sure. But it has kind of felt like it's like edging that way. But it's such an extreme contrast to feel as though that's happening in the 40k space compared to things getting absolutely wild and crazy on the AOS side. It feels like, especially with the Skaven reveals, every other reveal was something mind-blowing, hugely complex, but incredible. A stark contrast to the Blood Angel reveals, where it felt like every other thing was okay, but kind of bland. It's quite an extreme difference. If it is about accessibility, if it is about allowing new people into the hobby and making it so that they're not intimidated when painting, that is simultaneously good and bad. It's good in that more people might get involved. It's bad in that you don't want everything to look the same, which is what we could be heading for if they're not careful. If it's a case of just trying to make all the Primaris stuff a bit more compatible with each other, that's only okay to a point, but that will take away the personality of the individual chapters that have those additional units and those additional elements, and that's not something I'd like to see them really pursue. If it's just a case of 40k is more established, 40k is as it is. It has been around for far longer, there's far less scope for them to just go absolutely wild with new things. I can kind of see that too, and I think that is a big part of why 40k doesn't feel quite as like breakneck when it comes to things just changing and new stuff appearing. It is a much more established universe. It has got a huge weight behind it in terms of its history, its lore, the stories that have already been told, what has already been deemed acceptable by the people who play it. You know, I'm including myself in that. But it does sometimes make it feel like 40k is becoming just that bit more bland. And that's not necessarily what you want. Or at least it's not what I want, anyway. Kind of rambly, but you're very used to that at this point, aren't you? Thank you very much to Into the AM for sponsoring this video. Do remember to go and check them out using the link in the description and the pinned comment. And remember to use that link and my discount code for 10% off. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.